Everybody, welcome to another edition of Conference Carolinas Chat. We got a really big treat today. We have you've probably seen his byline. You've seen some of the stories done on our Body, Mind, and Soul features on conferencecarolinas.com. But we got PR legend, and he'll gush when I say that, but we got PR legend Bob Rose with us today to kind of tell a little about himself and tell about some of the stories he's been telling. How you doing today, Bob?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. And first off, thanks for all you do for Conference Carolinas with these stories. They've been fantastic. Like I said, people have seen your byline, but kind of as I call you a PR legend, like I said, I know you'll gush. Or you won't gush, but you'll blush, I guess is probably the better word. When I say that, tell us about your background and kind of where you are today.
Yeah, no, this is kind of a new chapter for me. I'm essentially retired, living in Asheville, North Carolina, moved from the Bay Area last year. So it's kind of nice to still stay involved in athletics. That's kind of been my entire life. It's a long story, so just, tell me when I have to stop because it's a long story. But I've been so blessed. I was 18 years old when I got the sports information director job at Pepperdine, a university in Southern California. I was a sophomore in school, and they had some budget issues, and I came cheap. And it was a wonderful experience because I was a journalism major at Pepperdine. And all of a sudden, I kind of took a different path because I got this opportunity. And as it turned out, I inherited the #1 scorer in the nation, William Byrd Averett, who got a lot of national headlines, and it was an exciting time for a young kid. And so, especially in the LA market, very competitive, but exciting time. So that's kind of how I got my start, and I got to start early. And then I moved on after a few years to Stanford as the assistant SID, which some people thought I was crazy to leave the head job, but obviously a larger school, a larger conference, and I'm a Northern California kid, and so it was a great opportunity. And within 10 months, I was named the sports information director. They had a change in administration, and my boss moved up to an associate AD, and I got the SID job. So I was a very young SID at Stanford. And again, I inherit news. I inherit John Elway. He arrives on campus, and before I know it, I'm doing a Heisman Trophy campaign, which was a great experience, but it was also really a time where it just opened incredible doors for me with media. Here I was, this young guy, and I'm getting calls from every major media person. Brent Musburger's calling me, just begging for an interview, and it was pretty heady times for me, but it was a great experience. Still pretty young, probably too young to stay at Stanford. Otherwise, I probably would have stayed there the rest of my life because it was a great place. But I ventured into pro sports in a very unusual way, in that I became the PR director of the Los Angeles Express, which was part of the United States Football League, first spring football league, so I did that for a while, and it was a great opportunity because I made it a transition to professional sports, and yet it was kind of an off-Broadway production, but at the same time we had Steve Young as our quarterback, and we were in a big media market. So I went from there. Actually, the league office called me to be the PR guy for USFL league office. I knew Harry Usher, the commissioner. He had been the #2 man at the LA Olympics, which I had worked at, and went from there to the St. Louis Football Cardinals before they moved to Arizona. I tell you, it's a long story. It goes.
No, it's a great story. I'm enjoying it. I've heard it.
I'm still young. But went to the St. Louis Cardinals, and then moved with them to Arizona. But I met my future wife during that period in Phoenix, and she was at a TV station and as a business manager, and she just had within months we were dating, getting serious, and she got a job offer in Tampa Bay. So I was a little caught in between because I didn't want to lose her. But I said, you go ahead and move. I'll finish one season here in Arizona, and then I'll come join you. I'll look for a job in Florida because we were getting serious. Mm-hmm. And as it turned out, I started looking, and I got an offer very early on in the process to go work for a company that was subcontracted with the city of St. Petersburg, which was undergoing a big development, and they just were about to build this dome stadium where the Rays play now. And so I talked to Gene Stallings, the head football coach, who went on and won a national championship at Alabama, but he was with the Cardinals, and he was really my closest friend, I think, in the organization. And I asked, I said, boy, they're just starting training camp. I really feel bad about this, bad timing. But I got this job offer that's pretty good in St. Petersburg, and that's where my girlfriend is. And Gene, being a very wise man, he just said, Bob, he goes, you can always find another job, but you can't always find the right woman. So that was his blessing, and I left. So I never got to the first season in Arizona. Went to St. Petersburg. I was in charge of the grand opening of the Dome Stadium, and also helped the city of St. Petersburg as they were trying to get an expansion baseball team.
Yeah.
And then, but then I got an opportunity that I just couldn't pass up. Tex Schramm, who was the late, great Tex Schramm,
no doubt,
who was the president of the Dallas Cowboys, really the mastermind behind the America's team. Just a brilliant PR man, really, even though he had a higher position. And he had just been hired by his good friend, Pete Rozelle, to start this new international football league called the World League of American Football. And Tex called me and wanted me to be a PR guy in the league office in New York. And I kind of started to learn more and more about the team. First of all, the NFL owners own the team, so I knew it was on solid ground. And second, I'm going, okay, so I'm going to be based in New York, but I'm going to be spending a lot of time in Europe on their dime. And it's kind of an exciting thing to kind of bring American football to Europe. Mm-hmm. And so I took the job. And my wife was very, very flexible, I guess, cooperative. And so we moved up to New York, lived in Connecticut. And so I did that for a while, and that was really wonderful. Probably my best job I ever had. You had teams in Barcelona, Frankfurt, and London. We tried to get a team in Milan, spent a lot of time in Italy, which was not a bad thing.
Yeah, not a bad thing.
And then we had a team in Montreal, and then we had some teams in the United States. And it was a short season, 10-week season. So it was a pretty good gig. So I did that for a while. And then the World League was suspended by the NFL owners, not because of the World League, because we had been fairly successful. But they had some labor issues, and they didn't want to. We were still losing money, which, of course, was going to be the case after only a couple of years.
Yeah.
So anyway, then I get an opportunity to go back home. I grew up above Sacramento, but the Bay Area was, all those sports teams were my team. So my childhood team with the San Francisco Giants got an opportunity to be the PR guy with the Giants. And not only be a PR guy, but be able to play a role at a very critical and historic time, because they were it was a new ownership group. This was 1993. Dusty Baker just was named the manager, and their whole mission was to build a new ballpark. Yeah. And being a kid who grew up watching Willie Mays and Willie McCovey and Juan Marichal at that windy Candlestick Park, had to be the worst. I mean, I guarantee you, real Giant fans were absolutely as courageous and as tough as any Green Bay Packer fan in December, because it was that bad at Candlestick. So it was kind of neat to be able to be part of something that was going to totally change the paradigm, change it. And we did. So we went through all that, and was with the Giants for almost 10 years. Obviously, Barry Bonds, all that stuff. He wasn't the easiest guy to deal with, but it was certainly he certainly was a newsmaker. Yeah. And then But you know what? This is kind of the message I'd send to anybody, and I know these are the values of a lot of the people that work in your conference. It comes down to family. It comes down to who you love and what's most important. Yeah. And we just had a son, and I knew that it was not a good job to have anymore because I was traveling with the team. I was gone a lot. Yeah. And so I got an opportunity to go to work at the University of California in Berkeley, right across the bay. And that was a wonderful decision. It kind of took me a little bit out of the spotlight, but we still were doing some good things. And my son was growing up on a great college campus. And to this day, I look back on that and say, well, that was a great decision. So I went there as an associate athletic director. Fortunately, after a couple of years, Jeff Tedford came in as football coach, and Aaron Rodgers was my quarterback. I haven't lacked good quarterbacks in my career.
I was going to say that helped.
And so that was it was really a great time. And so I did that, and then I've kind of done my own thing a little bit. Did PR after that on my own. And then once our son had gone off to college, or was about to go off to college, I decided, you know what, I have one more sports team in my system before I retire, and I got an opportunity to be the PR guy for the Oakland A's, and that was great too. Had a wonderful time. So
yeah, so
that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, I was about to say, it was an unbelievable story, and I wanted you to tell that because like I said, people see your byline and they see at the bottom. Just a very short paragraph.
I belong at the bottom.
Well, I mean, that's what we do, right? And with PR, your job's talking about Aaron Rodgers and Barry Bonds. It's not really talking about you, right? That's the job. Yeah. And speaking of that, I wanted to ask you this question just because I think it's important. You've done all these things, but a great story is a great story wherever you are. When people ask you this question, what do you tell them that makes a great story?
Yeah, that's a great question because it's also a question or something that I try to impart when I talk to young journalism students as well, because I think that's kind of where it starts. A great story, number one, has a lot of depth to it. Usually has a few layers. It's not just, they're the leading scorer on the soccer team. There's layers to it. And in most cases, it doesn't matter whether on what level, pro level, college level, high school level, there's very few standout athletes that haven't overcome adversity. Somewhere along the line, they had to overcome adversity. And I think that's really interesting and inspirational to a lot of people who would read the story. And I also think that obviously I'm always interested in what they do off the field. And certainly in a conference like Conference Carolinas, it reminds me a lot of when I worked at Cal and Stanford, because these are really student athletes and they have ambitions when they graduate. They go way beyond sports. And, a lot of them already have done some interesting internships or maybe something was really profound early in their life that left them with a keen interest in something. And I think beyond that, as an interviewer, I think that's an important part to get a good story. I think that, I don't care whether you're a young kid in college or you're my age, you should do your homework a little bit. And I do. Fortunately, I have time. I'm like I said, essentially retired. And so I already have a set of questions I want to ask. And then you got to have the ability to have follow-up questions. But I think that, you start thinking about things and, if you don't think about it, like, we had, what was it, the volleyball player who's from Greece. Mm-hmm. I said, boy, he grew up in a real ancient place, probably saw history every day. And so I want to ask him about that. Yeah. I don't want to just ask him about his volleyball. And, the thing that I really, I will say this, it's been such a blessing and a gift that you've given me to do these stories, because we're in such a tough time with the COVID, and there aren't a lot of positive things, and it's very uplifting. Every one of those stories I write, hopefully you guys get a sense of that, but that's how I feel when I'm doing the interviews. There's just a lot of good stories out there, and I haven't run out. You've done me a favor, because everybody goes, "Oh, it's a good story. It's a good." Well, yeah, it's a good story. It's not about me writing it. It's a good story, and it's wonderful. You have all these stories in the conference.
Yeah, and I think that you just hit on a couple points that I try to tell people all the time too. Is that anybody can be an editor. Not everybody can tell a story. And then also, like, there's always a story, right? There's always a story to tell, no matter what. And when you have student athletes like in Conference Carolinas that are so special, it's how do you tell that and get that out to a larger audience? And even internally, how do you tell the story of why Body and Mind and Soul in Conference Carolinas is so important? And that's where we thank you. But I say that to segue into, now that you've been doing it, because it's a year now, you've been doing these stories, when you look back on it, you mentioned the one about, an All-American men's volleyball player from Barton, that you've done, but tell us about some of the other stories or something that kind of highlights it when you look back on it.
Yeah. Well, and they kind of, they fit in certain orders, There's those that are kind of immigrant stories, because there's a lot of international student athletes in the conference, and that's always interesting, right? I mean, I can't remember, there's been a few that are coming from the Caribbean, and their first winter alone is a good story, right? Yeah. And then you also got those that are just their faith has played such a role, especially coaches. And athletic directors, and I think that's very inspirational. And they're just like trailblazers, like Kiana O from one of the first female NFL scouts. I mean, that's a great story. That's some of these stories, and I know, Brian, we've talked about it, but some of these stories they have national potential. Yeah. Because they're really making news, right?
Yeah.
I think the most favorite, my most favorite ones, and it's hard to pick because I really have enjoyed them. I'd say Landon Davis, the 10-year-old kid who has hemophilia, and the relationship he has with the Barton baseball team. That's just a wonderful story.
Yeah, special.
And it reflects well on him. Not only does he have hemophilia, but he's got a heart condition. He can't play baseball, but he still wears a full uniform in the stands rooting his team. But I think the other aspect of it, which again is just so heartwarming, is how all these baseball players became like almost older brothers to him.
Family.
And so when you look at the experience that they've had during their college career, this is a whole new dimension that I'm sure is going to serve them well the rest of their lives. And they're going to be grateful about when they have kids and things that happen later. They're young. They don't realize it yet, probably. Also, Michael Neustiftler. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. The
North Greenville, yeah.
Yeah, the third baseman for North Greenville. What a story that is. And I know it got some national coverage as well. I mean, here's a guy who he comes from Oklahoma State, which immediately told me he's a big-time baseball
player, yeah.
He's a big-time baseball player, and yet he comes to North Greenville and loses his sight, or at least he can't see clearly for a year, and it looks like it might be something that he's going to have the rest of his life, and he has to deal with that. And he's got a mother you can't have a more loving mother who is trying to figure out a way to get his sight back, and then he finally gets it back. And the added bonus for me was when I was the PR director with the Oakland A's, our backup catcher was Landon Powell, who caught Dallas Braden's perfect game when I was there. And now he's the coach in North Greenville, so I got a chance to catch up with him. So that was fun. And I think probably the third one would be the one I've done more recently, the Aurora Roberts from Lee McRae, who, again, much like Michael, she probably thinks, boy, I mean, my career's over. I may not be able to even walk again because I'm paralyzed from the neck down while she was in high school, and now she's back and she's a starting basketball player at Lee McRae's. Those are like, it's pretty amazing, and it's inspiring. I mean, hopefully people who read the stories are inspired by it, and in many ways, how can you not follow them and root for them? I want them to do well.
Oh yeah, You're exactly right, and like, and I'll follow up with this, because you mentioned some special stories, and they all, as we were alluded to, they're all special in their own little way. But as you've told these stories, is that just it too? Is that what makes Conference Carolina so special? Is it that there are so many stories, or that there, as you were talking about, taking them with Cal Stanford, which is high praise, but they are truly student athletes?
Yeah, there's no doubt. There's no doubt. I've had this conversation with you offline because I have seen a lot. I've been a lot of places, and I've been in underdog situations. I've been in, with pro teams that you never had to worry about getting media coverage. You just had to worry about what they're going to say, but you didn't have to worry about
exactly.
media. So I've been through a lot, but I think that what I have experienced over the last year, I really have grown in my appreciation for the mission of these schools, not just the terms of the school, but the athletic department. Virtually everyone I talk to, you can see how committed they are to developing the full person, and they really care about their student athletes. They want them to go on and do well, whether it's in athletics, whether it's in some professional career. I mean, they're not only committed, I mean, they're fiercely committed. Even in my years when I was at Cal or Stanford, the thing that I think you notice is that the real true experience of a student athlete is still such a valuable thing. It's not about the nationally televised game on Saturday. It's about those qualities. It's about learning leadership, learning teamwork, learning to get along with people from young people from different cultures, different economic levels. So you bring that to the academic education you get, and what happens is it produces very successful people when they leave, when they get their degree. And more times than not, they become leaders. They're certainly competitive, which isn't a bad trait when you're trying to do well in your career. And so, it's one of those things that, you talk about the body, mind, and soul. I would add a fourth one. I'd put values, because the values in this conference are terrific. And I don't think that there's no apologies to be made that, oh no, we're Division II, we're not no. That the actual experience, if my son was he's already grown, but I'd want him to go to a school like this. I went to a Pepperdine that had some similarities. Small school. I grew up in a small town, which most of these schools are in small towns, and I think there was something special about that, because at the end of the day, you get to know the people, you get to know the professors, you get to know everyone well. And what's the price tag on that? Because a lot of these places that have the big classrooms and there's an athletic dorm and they're separated from the rest. Is that really the full experience you want? I don't think so. I think it's a terrific thing, and it's great that I can even play a small role in that with these stories.
And you just hit the nail on the head, honestly. You've been telling these stories, and that's why I wanted to bring you onto this, so people could see your face and also learn your thoughts as you're telling these stories, because you're exactly right. Conference Carolinas has some of the best student athletes in the country. And I say that not as a assistant commissioner in the conference. I say that because I've been other places as well, and I see it, and it's really special. And we really thank you and you know what? Sure. Even more importantly, you're now one of those special people. You're now one of those people. You're family now too in Conference Carolinas. You tell the story, your family. So we really appreciate everything you've done for Conference Carolinas in this way.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. I tell you that I'm speaking from the heart. I really enjoy this, and I do think it's a very noble mission that everyone's going through, and it's great to tell the stories. Great to tell the stories.
Well, thank you for your time, and thank you all for joining us. We'll see you next time on Conference Carolinas Chats.